So what exactly can AI do and not do? That's the question. Let's get to it. Welcome. Another fabulous episode of IBF On Demand. I'm your AI-enhanced but 100% natural host, Eric Wilson. You can find me at eric@ibf.org. That's eric@ibf.org. Thanks for the follows and subscribes. You can find me on LinkedIn. Please find me on LinkedIn. Of course, on YouTube or wherever you're getting this podcast, there is a subscribe button, so please take the time. I said I'm 100% natural, so I guess that means I'm organic too, but I don't know about that. I never go for the organic food, so maybe I'll just say I'm natural. We'll go with that. I want to thank our sponsors for today, Arkiva, driving business transformation by solving what others cannot. Thank you, Arkiva. Still going strong after all this year. It's a wonderful company. Please check them out. They're doing some great things, and they would love for you to visit them and tell them thanks for being able to sponsor this podcast. Once again, IBF, they do a lot as well. IBF is what I've been doing for the past few months, in case you're wondering, is doing a lot of corporate trainings. Yeah, I do conferences, go and speak at conferences and things of that sort, but I do a lot of corporate trainings as well. I've been to Houston, talking to an electric company there, been talking to bicycles, soft drinks and sodas, to alcohol, to paper, and everything in between. If you have more than 10 people and want a personalized in-house training, reach out to me. That's eric@ibf.org or ibf.org. There's a whole website there that we'll talk about as well. So look at the corporate training and everything we can do to personalize some upskilling, some engagement from your employees, but also just kind of level set everybody talking the same language and being able to learn some key skills in demand, supply, S&OP, and related fields then as well. Today, I wanted to kind of do a continuation from the last podcast. Last one, I actually sat down with Microsoft and we talked about AI. We talked about a lot of other things too, and it was a great podcast. Go back and check it out. It's the last one we just did. And there was a lot of great feedback then from it as well. So thank you very much for people that reached out to me. I always appreciate that. But actually, it ended up being more questions than answers, or people wanting more my opinion for some unknown reason than they had questions or statements about what it was. So coming off my keynote I just did in Chicago, which was actually on AI and S&OP and current trends, that future trends we see in planning, I just pretty much wanted to continue this conversation with you and kind of give you exactly the presentation I gave in Chicago, since most of you missed it. See, you can't miss these conferences in person. Once again, ibf.org. Check out where we're going to be. So guess what we're going to talk about today? I'm going to give you a kind of a highlights of what I talked about in Chicago, but we're going to talk a little bit more about AI. Planning right now, we're at a crossroads. 70%, over 2/3 of professionals right now saying they can't keep up with the pace of change that they're seeing. And when I talk about change, it's just not AI. It's just not technology. Yes, there is the change we see with technology. There's changes we're seeing with data, the amounts of data. There is change there. But we're also seeing change in the volatility. Supply shocks have just crippled a lot of supply chains, but that ripples down to forecasting and demand planning then as well. So from a demand, from supply, from S&OP, we're dealing with that volatility. We're also seeing complexities. There's product proliferation still happening. We've been talking about this for decades and people still haven't learned. There's all kinds of new products happening at an increased rate and an increased amount. So we're seeing complexity happen too. All the configurations that the consumers want, we are trying to provide for them as well, which leads to the last complexity of expectations. That consumer, they want things faster. They want to have their needs met. And you need to build in agility and resilience into your planning. So we are at a crossroads now of volatility, complexity, the expectations of the consumer, and the amount of technology and data that we're seeing now as well. All those, in the center of all those, this Venn diagram that we can create, that is where you are today. That is where you are sitting, in the middle of that complexity. And that is the reason why we say 70% of the people say we can't keep up with the pace of what's happening. This puts us not only at a crossroads, but really at an inflection point. We are at an inflection point right now where we have the decisions as planners, as professionals, as practitioners in our fields. You, in the role you have right now, you have a say of what the future is going to look like. We are at a strategic inflection point. We can decide if we can go with the traditional planning cycles that were too slow and siloed and reactive. We're going to look at just internal insights and not have cross-functional alignment and use the tools we had of yesterday. Or are we going to really be part of this AI evolution or revolution that we might be seeing? This is a turning point for our future, and we get to decide which direction or how these become adopted in our planning going forward. So I think before we go too far into it, we probably need to define exactly what AI is, what artificial intelligence definition might be. And the thing is you can find a lot of definitions for them. And some people are very passionate about their definition, and there's other definition. But the thing is it's an ambiguous term. That's the reason why you might already know this. I've mentioned it before. I really don't like the term AI because you cannot define it. And there is a lot of people that try to and end up using its own type of words to define itself, which really doesn't work too well. But for the sake of this podcast and for sake of us understanding what this AI revolution or evolution might be and what this inflection point we're at, let's actually define a little bit of what AI is. Kind of the definition that we landed upon is artificial intelligence, AI, for planning is the capability of a machine or system to augment or automate any process or output. Systems include a collection of algorithms, hardware, software, and or connectiveware. So that is a generic term. And the problem with that generic term is it is pretty all-encompassing when you see that kind of term. So with that, I can present to you what I thought AI was, or actually by that definition, what AI actually was back when I was going to school. My TI-64 scientific calculator. That was an AI calculator. And what we actually had was something that was programmed to perform specific tasks based on predefined rules or patterns, but by our definition, it augmented or automated some type of input or output into the process. Even though it was operating off of predefined rules, it was still, in essence, a form, I guess, of AI. It was using some type of AI. And that's where we came from. Actually, we've come from, if you look at the history, we've been doing neural networks for decades. And there's I'm not going to go through the history lesson because I really don't know a lot of it. But what I can tell you from it is we went from really pre-programmed specific tasks to what was then in the late 1900s going into kind of the fetch and grab. That was our search engine. That was we'd be able to retrieve and index relevant existing information that was personalized based on either my user preference, other things that I've looked up, or prompt what I asked for in the bar as what I wanted to find out information about. But that was really the fetch and grab that happened in the late 1900s. I say this because we're going through a progression to what we saw in 2022, I believe, which was ChatGPT, which was generative AI really came into what we know and became mainstream. I mean, and what I think really made it what it is because it commercialized it. You created an app that anybody could interact with. And that's what made it really accessible to everybody at that point. But what generative AI really went from a pre-programmed task to a fetch and grab of relevant existing information, was data that you can generate new data from without being limited and generate coherent, contextual, relevant outputs. That is what we were creating with generative AI. So what's this mean to planning? What's this mean to sales and operations and demand? Well, I'm getting to that. Because when we define it, it was one thing just to define the words, but another way to see what it's done and how some of those things are being utilized in planning in S&OP today. But what we really want to get to is how it will be used and possibly what is next. I said there was a great podcast I did with Microsoft. Check that out. There was a lot of great insights to that. I'm not going to repeat everything that was in there, but I'll give you some highlights from it and then add to it some other things that I've worked with other companies, we had other podcasts, or things that I'm familiar with that's going on with talking with other organizations. The first trend that I'm seeing is really that intelligent planning using AI, or what we're really, to be honest, is machine learning. It's using to look at the data itself to help detect anomalies and understand the patterns in it before it starts forecasting as well. It's used for different types of segmentation and clustering that we're seeing, and be able to then feed different types of optimization models. But a lot of it, what it's doing is not only taking this information in, understanding the situation or separating it and data into smaller manageable groups that it can then do other types of analysis in, but it's recommending actions from it as well. The other thing we're seeing is yes, we had large language models. Now we're seeing small language models that can interpret unstructured data, such as customer feedback and reviews, and start to feed this into demand signals and actually bring in that data into new product forecasting or being able to become more and more reactive. We're trying to take the latency out of the process. The quicker we can get information, turn it into insights, demand sensing, and we could utilize that into forecasting, the better we can then react to it or plan for it in the future. That is what we're being able to see now, utilizing some of these machine learning and other types of small language models and customer sentiment. So this makes the planner's new role less about data crunching. What we're seeing is it's more of decision support or decision making, having the capability of translating information into something that can make actionable insights and recommendations from them as well. Now, with everything, AI comes with a warning label. I actually did one on, AI's breeding mediocrity. So I guess this is just a combination of all these different podcasts I did, or maybe you can go back and binge watch some of these as well. But in that, I really highlighted the problem with this is an over reliance on it is going to ultimately breed mediocrity in what you do. As one thing becomes, normalized, everyone starts to migrate towards that mean. And when you go out and it provides an answer, it's going to provide an answer that's pretty much an average answer, which makes the edges less and less utilized. This can become problematic because that's where innovation happens sometimes at those edges. Real life example. When you were to ask what is demand planning and business forecasting, I hope you understand watching these podcasts. I hope you understand being in the profession that a demand plan should be as unbiased and unconstrained as possible. Every time you constrain a plan, you are answering a question. And this is a prediction problem. You're not answering that question. You're making a prediction so then you can optimize and make a better solution and better answer. So you want to be as unconstrained as possible. So textbook definition is as unconstrained as possible. That's what you have in the fundamentals book. That's what's on the exams. That is what you should have. The problem out there is a couple large websites that are really not in demand planning that are promoting demand planning as a constrained plan, because that is what they had decades ago, and that's what they're still promoting. One's a large university, has a supply chain program. The other's another software company that doesn't really do demand planning. They do just more of ERP system, but they have a large presence. So SEO, they dominate. So when you Google or anything of that sort, it comes up first. Well, guess what? Same thing works for ChatGPT or any type of language that you're going and trying to figure out an answer, and you put in what it is, it's going to go out and it finds out that is the answer it's giving that has the highest ranking. It gives you that answer. And not only is it giving you that answer, but it's also citing those sources now. And when you ask questions, a lot of times it will give you those answers in any type of search engine, and it will cite those. As you're citing those, you're giving it more and more credibility of that is your answer. At the same time, some of IBF's knowledge pages, some of the other great websites out there that have good content, some of their information is going further down on the SEO ratings, on the website rankings. Why? Because there's a lot of people writing generic content out, and you know how they write that generic content? They ask AI to write it for them. And AI goes out and fetches this wrong information and feeds it back into a new article that is then propagating this problem. So we've already seen it in real time, AI breeding that mediocrity. An over-reliance on it is going to be problematic. We need to continue to push for new ways of looking at things, new answers, and we can't have an over-reliance. Over-reliance without governance, risk, poor adoption will lead to misleading or mediocre outputs. Human oversight is ultimately still going to be needed. But that was first one. We are seeing AI starting to slice and dice data a little bit better, more data, but also looking at that consumer sentiment. The other thing we're seeing is S&OP now as agents. AI as agents. We are starting to see it creep into the boardrooms and S&OP executive reviews. I had, once again, a whole podcast with Karim that talked about this, and we're seeing more and more. We talked about it last week with Microsoft in the agentic AI. AI-driven assistance is what we're seeing. These are proactively performing tasks like scenario planning, generating reports, and triggering alerts. These are AI that can now, in essence, think based on some criteria and probability. It will then give you some type of useful insights. The example we gave in that previous podcast is there was a problem. The CEO asked what was going to happen, and all these smart executives in the room looked at each other, and the AI S&OP agent said, this is what the problem is. You can do this. You can do this. This is the problem. He looked at everybody else. He went with that solution. Why? Because it spoke his language and it had his attention. Those are the main reasons why I did it. Beyond that, the answers are getting better and better. But what we're seeing in the speed of business being able to react, latency is a problem. This helps you become more agile. And guess what? It's talking our language now as well. So we can then perform scenario planning. It can look at different solutions and give recommendations based on probability. It can generate reports now without you having to ask it for it. It can trigger alerts that then somebody else can act upon. Those become S&OP agents. Think of all the mundane parts of an S&OP process. Absolutely, it can do that. But now, think of a lot of the interaction decision making. It can start to do that then as well. Unlike passive tools, agentic AI can observe, act, and actually reflect. They are programming now AI with inductive reasoning. Where, remember I said this problem with the normal distribution, everything breeding towards mediocrity? They're programming it now to think of alternate, extreme, different solutions before it comes to a conclusion now. Inductive reasoning. It's being programmed into agentic AI right now. It can observe, act, and reflect on its own decisions. Applications for this, obviously. Agents can dramatically adjust plans based on incoming data, proposed trade-offs of what would happen that you couldn't even think of across functional and real time. Think of baseball. AI has really revolutionized baseball over the past decade, allowing shifts in the way players are going, the way we pitch, and it's based on AI. That gut feel they found out, guess what? Doesn't work. We have probabilities that we can plan for. We still have humans playing. We still have coaches, but now we're using the tools to help build better teams and better results. Think of it that way. Think of that as your S&OP agent or your AI agent. This is going to reduce meeting fatigues. It's going to reduce manual reconciliation, data collection, and being able to have to put together reports. It becomes, in essence, another team member. It's part of your team. It's evolving. S&OP is evolving from a cycle to a dynamic responsive system with built-in intelligence into it. Cautionary tale here as well. It's not replacing it. It is a tool. It's helping enable. It's that automate or augment the inputs and output. This is automating certain outputs and inputs. This is augmenting what you can do. It is still not replacing. But there is a point where we may have to start embracing. The third thing we want to talk about is really, it's generative networks, but we're talking about synthetic data here. These are the deep learning models where two or more neural networks compete to create realistic synthetic data. Remember, I said we went from really pre-programmed to fetching and grabbing what is data that's already out there. We are actually creating new data that's never existed before. We are creating synthetic data. And how is this used in planning? We can start to simulate demand patterns, market scenarios, historic data with limited or minimal bias. We can start doing control towers, 360 views, and digital twins, bringing in data that has been created by AI and machine learning. It creates scenarios. It creates different types of patterns in being able to simulate these hypothetical events and hypothetical data. Real world applications, we can create it for recession scenarios, the tariffs that were happening, disruptions, demand spikes, any type of external signal you can think of, currency rates, CPI, consumer price index, whatever you can think of, you can now create hypotheticals or data of scenarios that you can plug into it. It allows you an unlimited amount of what-if scenarios. And once again, we've been talking about this as well. Matt Walsh from General Mills had a phenomenal podcast, and I've been talking about what he's been doing ever since. He's got a program called the Jenny Project. But what they did was actually go out and talk to real people. And that's what they do in market studies and consumer test markets. And they took this information from 100 or so people, and they created thousands of virtual personas. Thousands of synthetic people, in essence, is what they have. And what they do now, instead of going back out to test market with these people and bringing people in, and people have these biases and they might be having a bad day or whatever's happening in their life and getting a limited number of samples, they now look at pricing, size of box, colors, anything you can imagine, and test it to these virtual personas, the synthetic people out there, the thousands of synthetic people that the generative AI has created, and they are getting better results now than what they did before. Think of the use cases for that. Think of the possibilities of bringing in thousands of data points into your planning process. It's the capabilities are limitless at this point. Now, caution, the same thing we talked about before is these people, once again, they can diverge towards the same average persona between all of them. We have to intentionally understand that even though it minimizes my bias, it can create new ones. It can create biases. We've seen case studies where it creates real biases when it comes to people and the way people think, because they look at reactions and the way people do things. So understand these things is we have to have some type of governance in the process. There has to be human parts, because a system will do exactly what you program it to do. We know that. So we have to be the ones in control of the process. But there is a point where we are at this inflection point now, which brings me to a final story I kind of want to leave you with. This is a story about my pawpaw. Okay, this is actually my granddad, or my pawpaw is what we called him. And growing up, and had a mule that was always used to be able to plant his field. And for years, he would use this mule to be able to be able to plow things up, to be able to plant, to be able to till. Everything he wanted, that mule could do for him. And for years, we told him that he had to get a tractor. And the neighbors were getting tractors. They were becoming more productive. And we kept trying to talk him into getting a tractor, because time he spent out there, we know was really grinding on him in his years. And that mule was not getting younger. So we had this mule, and by the way, mule's name was Bobby. And I always wanted a goat, but we got this mule, and I was able to name the mule Bobby. And that mule was doing a heck of a job, but then unfortunately one day, the mule finally passed. And at that point, had to make a decision. And Pawpaw finally made the decision. He got his first tractor. He was embracing the technology at that point. He got in his tractor, first year with his new tractor, never got that tractor out of the first gear. Why? Because that was the same speed his mule went. And he wasn't about to go any faster than what he knew at that point. And for years on, he always plowed that field, always in first gear. Now, luckily, I got to end up getting a goat, named him, you guessed it, Bobby the Second. But there was a story here, and it wasn't about the goat, and it wasn't really about the mule. It was about the human side of things. There is a cultural aspect. We are at an inflection point. We can decide what we're going to do with the technology that's available right now. Are we going to embrace it? But how we use it. There is a human side of this thing that we get to determine how this is going to be utilized and if it's going to work for us. There is a process side of this as well. AI is not going to replace planners. It's going to reshape the process, redefine what great planners and great planning looks like and what you can do. These trends aren't just tools, they're capabilities. And in the hand of demand planners with the right mindset and new skills, there's new capabilities. And the future of S&OP is going to be intelligent, agentic, and always on. We need to figure out from where we are, where we're going. And we have that capability. Someone doesn't define it for us. You, the professional, you, the practitioner out there, you, the service providers out there as well. I know you're watching as well. We define what this future looks like. We're not going to get the shiny tractor just because it's a shiny new tractor. We're going to get it because it's going to help us out. And we're going to decide how we're going to use it, and hopefully we're going to get it out of first gear going forward. Well, that's a wrap. I'm going to go edit this podcast using most likely some AI tools and come up with some quick bite title using probably ChatGPT or another type of AI and post it and optimize it in the AI algorithms on social media. Like it or not, we all need to adapt to the future. We're there. My name is Eric. You can find me at eric@ibf.org. That's eric@ibf.org. Thanks for the follows, the subscribes. Check out our sponsor, Arkiva, driving business transformation by solving what others cannot. They are doing some great things as well, and they are doing some great things as far as pushing the boundaries as well. Check out what they're doing it. They're doing it very responsible, and they're meeting your needs as the consumer out there. So check out Arkiva. By the way, I'm here to help people foster the growth of demand planning, business forecasting, S&OP related fields. That is what IBF's mission is. And I'm passionate about that as well. And with that, we don't only help people, we help companies realize your potential as well. If you're a company, 10 or more, check us out, ibf.org. In-house training. There's other services we can do for you as well. But definitely with those trainings, we can customize the training to what you need. It helps upskill some of your teams to what's coming. But it also gives them the foundations they can build upon today. People start talking the same language. You find collaboration builds from this as well. And it also builds engagement of the people that is involved. There's across the board great results from it. If you want more information, reach out to me, eric@ibf.org, or check out ibf.org. There's a lot of information there as well. And remember, AI does a lot of things, but it's still people. And don't forget, wash your hands.